Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first of my conversations with some of my leading ladies. Now, if you're wondering what Leading Ladies is all about, I wrote this book. I hope you can see it. I wrote this book just under 4 years, just over 4 years ago, in fact. And the idea was to speak to women who had, in their own unique way, found a way to be fulfilled and happy, and I suppose find their purpose. It didn't start off with that intention. It was just to hear some interesting stories of women who were doing the thing they loved. But what it became was a collection of stories of 32 women who, I think, and I mean this in the best possible way, are ordinary women just like me, who have done something really interesting and unique with their lives. And I thought it was worth sharing their stories to inspire ordinary people like me to go off and do their own thing. And that's exactly what happened to me, because reading their stories and writing about them and connecting their stories with my own meant that I was able to discover what I was meant to do. So this is my little plug. If you would like to get a copy, it's on all sort of online retailers. However, until the end of this year, I also have a special offer where you can buy directly from me. So check the links for details. Anyway, we're going to start with the conversation. So today I have chosen to focus on entrepreneurs, and I have four of my ladies here with me today, and I'm going to introduce them to you very briefly. In fact, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and they will then sort of join me in some conversation about what's been going on for them since we wrote that book. So I'd like to first off ask Anne Wright of Rough House Media to briefly introduce herself. Hi, Anne.
Hello, hi. Thank you for inviting me to do this. It's very exciting. I'm a media consultant, basically, and my company does what we essentially provide is services which PR departments and PR agencies outsource. So a lot of that is around training. So we run training courses in crisis communications and giving interviews in the press and how to do your own PR and various kind of training courses. But we also do crisis communications strategy, and we do some video production as well. And we work mainly with charities and not-for-profits and public sector organisations rather than people trying to sell something in the supermarket. So that's
lovely.
That's us.
Thank you, Anne. And we're going to talk a lot more about that very shortly. And next, I'd like to introduce you to Claire Boscq-Scott of the Busy Queen Bee. Claire, introduce yourself, please.
Hello there. Hi, Rohini. I think you're going to need to start, before you need to actually make those videos, the next chapters in your book, so you can, upload new chapters. That would be exciting. Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Claire Boscq-Scott, the Busy Queen Bee. Yes. I am a mystery shopper and customer service global guru. I am. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. And now I'd like to hand you over to Raka Chakrawarti, Raka of Gourmet Delight.
Hi, Rohini. How are you? Hello, everybody. It's really nice to meet all of you once again. So very briefly about me, my name is Raka. So I have been an entrepreneur for the past 5 years, more than that, in fact. So I run a small organic and healthy food business called Gourmet Delight, like Rohini pointed out. So the aim of this business is to, we target health conscious people who are basically anywhere between 6 months to 85 years old. So the target audience is pretty big. And I have been a big believer in healthy food, and I practice it myself. So I feel that knowing what to eat, when to eat, makes a big difference apart from exercise. So that's what I do through my business. And I touch customers every day, listen to them, talk to them. And that's how it has been.
Thank you very much, Raka. And last but not least, Sharda Agarwal of Sepalika.
Thank you, Rohini, for having me here once again. Hi, everybody. My name is Sharda Agarwal. I am the co-founder of Sepalika, which is an online platform that focuses on helping women reverse their chronic health conditions naturally. So I'm very passionate about women's health. I feel that a lot of us tend to, including working women, tend to deprioritize our own health. It always comes last. So way before telemedicine became popular after the pandemic, we were doing online treatment because I said if women won't come to a clinic, I will go to them wherever they are. Right now, for regulatory reasons, focused in India. But all chronic health issues, we work with them to reverse using nutrition, using vitamins and minerals, using some very cutting edge lab report analysis work, and using lifestyle and acupressure.
That sounds amazing. And you're so right about women deprioritizing their own well-being because they're so busy looking after everyone else. So thank you so much for that. And we're definitely going to talk a bit more about the telemedicine and how you're able to reach people remotely, because I think that's a really interesting and very relevant point about today's world. So thank you for that. Now, if you're watching, I can actually see all my ladies on a gallery view, but to make it easy for your viewing, we're going to only have the person who's speaking show up on the video, but the other ladies are still with me, and we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible, but do bear with us because it's not quite the same as being physically in the same room. So I want to ask you all, I mean, obviously it was 4 years ago we wrote the book, or I wrote the book and you helped me with it, and 4 years seems like a really long time. Even this 1 year to me feels like in some ways, you know, it's been very long, but at the same time it's gone by really quick. So what I want to quickly maybe establish with each of you, and we don't necessarily have to go in the order we just went, is to perhaps you could quickly summarize, you know, what's changed for you in these last 4 years, some of the key highlights of, you know, what you think you've achieved or what's, you know, what's different about your business. Should we start with Raka?
So, well, much has changed for me in the past couple of years since the time that I talked to you about the book. So I feel that it's been a journey for me. So over time, I've matured as an entrepreneur, because initially when you start, it's too much, too soon, you're handling many things. So over time, what happens with maturity is that you start to think of how are you going to survive for the next 10 years, for the next 15 years, how are you going to turn profits, and how will your growth path be? So I have pivoted my business, changed my business model much before COVID hit, thankfully, and I'm building my brand right now. So that's the biggest priority. That's what I'm working on.
So maybe I can just stay with you, Raka, just to maybe flesh out what you just said. So in terms of, you know, what's changed for you, because I remember when we had that conversation 4 years ago, you were based mainly in Mumbai, and your reach was around Mumbai and that sort of area.
That's right.
So is that still the case, or have you
No,
changed?
that's not the case anymore. So
Okay.
I moved cities. Between that time, I moved to Bangalore. So when I moved to Bangalore, I had to think of how to make the business work without me. So what we did was we made it a national business, and now we operate out of Bombay, but everything else is decentralized. So we work with the big marketplaces, we work with the national customers, we send it to all over India. So that's what's changed. And 3 or 4 months before COVID hit, I had an epiphany. I decided that, you know, it can't work like that. So I just pivoted my business, and that's been the biggest boon because by the time it hit, before we realized what was going to happen, a lot of things started going down. But thankfully, because we are in the food business, we did extremely well, and we continue to do so. So in a way, it has been a blessing. And no, it wasn't because of the change in the, you know, economic conditions. It was just that I was thinking of how to do it in a smarter way, and I guess that's what it turned out to be. Yeah.
So that was a really useful epiphany to have had, wasn't it? And just for people who are not familiar with your business, so the key thing is that you don't have shops or anything. You basically take orders online and you deliver
100% online
food to the doors. So that must have been a real blessing in the lockdown.
Yeah, it was fabulous, and we are in the essentials business, so it just skyrocketed from March onwards. So it went up. The entire business started.
Amazing.
So it was a good time. It was a good thing we did. Call it, you know, providence, but it worked for us.
That's brilliant. So we'll talk a little bit more about that very shortly. So next I want to ask Sharda. Sharda, tell me what's happened, because from watching what you've been up to, obviously so much has happened for your business too.
Yeah, so when we last spoke in 2016, if you remember, Sepalika was a pure content platform. And my goal then was to largely focus on the US market, where we said that we would make people aware that all chronic health conditions can be reversed because they're all triggered to a large extent by lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, it's not that we, intentionally lead a bad lifestyle. It's a combination of genetics. Sometimes we do things we're not even aware of, the implications we're not aware of. So I said we would set up Sepalika to let people know that whatever be their chronic condition, there are ways to address it through changes in diet, through being aware of what vitamins or minerals you need specific to your condition. And also we said we would educate and make people aware of the kind of side effects that the drugs that they may be taking may cause. So it's not that the illness is causing a particular symptom, but it's actually coming because of the particular specific drug that you're taking. And all this was supposed to be put in a very consumer friendly language. So even people like, you and me probably, or at least I stopped studying biology in grade 10 or in high school, would be able to comprehend. Now, since then, we moved. And now my biggest learning then was that when you're a content platform and your source of revenues can only be advertising, the kind of traffic that I had to build each month ran into millions and millions, which meant that you literally need to churn out that much content on a daily basis. That was not the DNA of either of the co-founders. Neither was it possible, at least I felt, for someone who's talking about a serious health condition. I can't be talking about, how to reduce belly fat in, 2 days, or, more popular health subjects like 5 quick fixes for your headache. That was not where we were. So we moved to becoming a treatment clinic, and we made it online for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And we said we would focus on India, largely because, the business is centered out of this country, and also for regulatory reasons. And we said we will actually work with women to help them reverse the condition and set it up as a purely online. So, you could be city agnostic, location agnostic, and still avail of our services. So partly driven by the fact that I needed to find a good revenue generating option, and also partly coming from the very DNA. My co-founder, Mahesh, whom you do know, had a flourishing personal practice of working with people in the area of alternate health. So we just took his personal practice, the offline practice, online, and of course added a lot more to it. And now we are focusing purely on women's hormonal health as a clinic.
I think what's interesting to me is that, obviously when you first started, you probably had such a range of, conditions that you could have talked about, and you obviously know enough about to, produce high quality content. Can you briefly maybe talk us through why you picked, you picked a very specific area of women's health as well? Can you give us a little bit of thought on why you picked that?
Why women? It came from, both the founders' passion for working with women. For me, it goes back a very long way. I started my career at Johnson & Johnson. And at that time, I worked in the baby products category, and I worked a lot in the feminine hygiene category. So I knew, even today, the penetration of sanitary napkins in India is an abysmal 40%. That means 6 out of 10 women in this country are using a cloth pad, and many of them are not, you'll be horrified to know they use something like sawdust. And this is back then, there are social taboos, there is an education issue, and also there's a huge cultural issue, because in India, women felt that spending money on buying a sanitary pad is spending money on yourself for something that the world does not see. That's such a waste. Go back to my first comment where women always put ourselves last, at least in India. So the passion for women's health existed right from then. And one of the things that we figured was that a lot of women's health issues were actually coming from a hormone malfunction or an imbalance. So whether it is issues around the entire the period issues, whether it was thyroid, it's unbelievable the number of women I know today in India who are on thyroid medication. Whether it is diabetes, which is again an endocrine or a hormone condition, right? So we said, I want to pick women because women was our passion, and pick hormonal health because that if you address women's hormonal health, you're addressing 80-90% of their issues. And more specifically, going forward, I'd like to look at fertility. We've had a lot of women who've conceived on our programs, and it never started off that way. And I believe that we can really help infertile couples in India with natural fertility solutions.
I love that. I can already see 4 years from now a sort of another one of these discussions, and you telling us more about what you've done for women. That's great. Thank you, Sharda. So next I want to ask Anne, tell me, your business has been very much about helping other organizations to do their PR and their communication in a much better way. Tell me about what's changed for you in these last 4 years. I think you're on mute.
We haven't had a big pivot or anything like that, though COVID did, but I'm sure we'll talk about COVID a bit later. The thing that really changed is we were becoming more and more busy, and I was working full time in the business, and my husband was sort of helping out, but he was a producer at Sky TV, so he didn't have a lot of time, and he was offered redundancy, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't cope. And we have a VA and we have a team of consultants, but basically the business is run by me. And so my husband was offered redundancy, and he took redundancy, and that has just been fantastic, because he's been able to sort of take over doing the accounts and doing the books and doing a lot of the training, or until this year has done a lot of training, and just having somebody else full time as well, so we're working on the business together, is brilliant. And we moved into an office, not this office. I just moved into this office last week, away from another office, and it's brand new, which is why it's completely empty. I don't know if you can see, there's only one other desk so far booked in. So my husband doesn't work in the office with me. He works in a cafe instead, because we don't want to be in the same office. But and I think also we've expanded the number of services we do. So we didn't used to do, we now do courses in how to make videos with your phone, smart video courses, which have been really popular, which we didn't do before, but there's this kind of an expanding need for that. And a lot of companies can't afford to have to employ a production company, but there's always a big demand for video, so that's been really good. And just a bit more focus as well on the services we like to deliver versus the services that we did deliver. So sometimes we flirted with doing PR for a couple of clients, but really, to be perfectly honest, I hate doing PR. So we don't do that. Well, we have one client we still do it for, but basically we don't do that anymore. So we've kind of been more focused about what we want to do, and just having a bit more ease, because my husband is now in the business, which is great.
So the key changes have been, that you've got more products being offered and making them more relevant to today's world, where everyone's on social media, and even businesses need to have a social media presence.
Yes, yeah, and our client base is mainly charities and not-for-profit, so their budgets aren't big. Yes. But they still need lots of content, and a charity needs to have continual videos going out to to campaign for fundraising for whatever reason. So this has been really good for our sort of charity client base, basically. So yeah.
And I had just a couple of quick questions. Working with your partner or husband has its benefits and pitfalls. I mean, have you found that you can't constantly talk shop at home, or do you create boundaries? I think it's interesting that you have an office and you're not still working from home, which can sometimes lead to sort of lots of boundaries being awfully blurred.
Well, the lockdown did that, because obviously we were both working from home. I think if you told my son would say we talk about it all the time, but we try not to. And I think just not working in the same office is, I could not, we would kill each other, basically. So working separately in separate offices has been really good. And honestly, it's been fantastic for me just to, I was away a lot, or obviously not this year, but I'm away quite a lot, because there are some courses we do which aren't in London, and that was causing massive childcare issues. And every time, because my husband worked shifts when he was at Sky, because it's 24-hour news, so every time I was kind of booked to go to Huddersfield or somewhere, I would have to think, oh well, how am I going to manage that? What shifts is Graham on? So therefore, what are we going to do about childcare? And we had one memorable post this. We had one memorable kind of couple of days where we do something called crisis simulations at conferences, where we basically burst into a conference, they're not expecting us, and pretend that there's a crisis situation and all the delegates have to deal with it. And we were doing one in New York, which sounds very glamorous. It's quite glamorous. So we were doing one in New York, and we then had another training course the next day in Cambridge. So Graham was doing the one in Cambridge and I was doing the New York, and I was meant to fly in the morning and my son had his school assembly that morning. This is classic working mum stuff. Son had a school assembly that the next morning, and so we'd arranged Graham could leave. His training course in Cambridge was late enough that he could leave in the morning, and William would be by himself for sort of half an hour or something like that. And I got to the airport in New York, and we missed our flight. So we missed the check-in because the check-in ended, and I was literally standing at the check-in, like screaming at the check-in guys, I've got to be on the plane. I've got to be at my son's assembly. But he wouldn't relent. He was a typical New Yorker, like, can't help you, ma'am. But I got onto, there was one seat on the next plane. So the person I was with said, okay, you've got to have that seat, not me. So I got back. Somebody else had taken my son to school and got back, and cab took me home. I literally dumped my bag inside and then went straight to the school in the cab, turned up a bit behind. And it was a whole, typical working mum situation of, juggling everything. But we would never have been able to do any of that without Graham working in the business as well.
Yeah, so. Well, crisis management, straight away, you had to deal with it in your own life as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
That's great. Thank you, Anne. So Claire, tell me, I know you've been sort of properly globe-trotting until COVID put brakes on all that. Tell me about that. How's it been going for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, back 2016, there was a vision, and will I ever get to my vision? And I don't think that the vision of the business has ever changed. From the day 2009, I started my business, it was always about helping businesses to deliver exceptional customer experiences in any way possible. How can we make those experiences so much better in every possible way? So the core of the business has always been mystery shopping. So it was really helping the business measuring their service and then realizing what they're doing right, celebrating this, and then, how can they improve what they're not doing right? And so it's been a journey in developing new services which come around mystery shopping and how you can help the businesses with employee experience, with the customer experience, with the environment. So I'm a big Feng Shui practitioner, so I really love the environment and how this affect people. And oh my gosh, we've not seen the change over the last, obviously with the pandemic, having to work from home and all that kind of things. So it was about, developing new ways to help businesses to deliver that amazing customer experience. And then probably about 4 years ago, I wanted to do it in a bigger way. So although I was doing a lot of work locally back then, I've started doing a lot more work outside, globetrotting, like you said, and talking to larger audiences. So doing some of those things as a keynote speaker, as a business speaker, and sharing some of those things that they could very simply do to make that experience better. So it's been, I think the mission has always been there. I think at the time I was kind of trying to franchise the business, which was quite a really incredible experience. It hasn't quite worked out, but I've managed to license it. So again, it's learning what doesn't work, why is it not working, and actually what can you do in a similar way which will work in a better way. So instead of franchising with a full franchise model, I'm licensing different things like the mystery shopping now, licensing my model of leadership program, and being able to give that. So I've got somebody in Slovenia who's licensed under the Be Easy Queen Bee hat. And so she's bringing those programs and strategies to her local businesses and doing that way. So it was, obviously, we've got a question on what's work and the pandemic and all that a bit later on. But I think this year has been a huge shift in everything that I used to do offline, online. Yeah, I published another book as well. So that's been a great, really good. And you'll be very proud of me. I've managed to even reach #1 on Amazon, bestseller. Woo!
That's amazing. I must take some tips from you because I've never been able to achieve that. What I loved about your approach, Claire, is that when you talk about customer service, you include employees in that. So you've always called your employees as your internal customers, and customers as we know them as your external customers, and I think a lot of businesses tend to forget that, and they treat their employees as if they're just a resource, very easily replaceable. Tell me a little bit about how that's gone down in maybe some other countries where perhaps they are less, they think about things a bit differently.
Yeah, I think it's a lost opportunity for businesses to really thrive. If you're really caring and if you're really valuing your employees, everything else around is going to work. You don't even need to talk about customer experience, because if your employees are here, they're engaged, they love what they do, they skip in the morning to come to work, they'll want to perform, and they'll want to give great service, they will smile, they will be there, they'll generally be trying to help, and all those things that you're trying to do from the customer's perspective will happen because your employees are engaged. And so the last couple of years, it's been a real focus on really, putting the employee's experience in the middle of everything. And, we talk, obviously, when we talk about employee internal customers, we talk HR, but it's not just a HR thing. And that's the problem in companies is everybody needs to really care about the employees, and it needs to be at the board level. You need to talk about it when you're doing your board of directors meetings. You need to really kind of understand what are the steps, what you bring, what is your values, how all this mash together, and align each other, so your employees are really feeling that love and care that you want everybody to do. So employees' engagement, valued employees definitely drive profitability. And this is what we need. This is what I'm trying to really kind of emphasize, the importance of taking care about our internal customers, our employees. Yeah, definitely.
I completely agree with you. And I think there's this, Anne.
I just wanted to give you a little snippet, but because it's just occurred to me listening to Claire. So we have a team of consultants that we work with. We treat them as equals. They're all highly experienced. They're all very good at their jobs. And some of them work for another rival company as well. And I was talking to one the other day, and he said, I don't work for this other rival company anymore because they were just so horrible. And I said, what do you mean? He said they would, before a training course, they would send me an email in red block capital saying, this must go well because. And I'm kind of like, my God, and because of that, they've lost a really experienced and fantastic kind of resource for them, because they're just so mean, basically. I found it extraordinary. I would never send an email to one of my consultants in block capitals in red. Just amazing.
And it is those small things, Anne, isn't it? It's those small things that, people don't realize. Communications is crucial. Verbal, non-verbal communication are crucial. When you're talking to somebody and they're rolling their eyes, those kind of things, you can't, whether it's an employee or whether it's a customer, you can't do it, so no. and it's really it seems very simple, but it's not done consistently. That's not done in a way that is genuine as well, and we're trying to do this, but you have to do that instead, or so it's like there's always something behind it. So really kind of making that a priority is really important.
I also think it's a question of really educating employers, because in that instance, I wonder if the person who sent it even read it from the person's point of view that received it. That red is an angry color, block capitals indicates you're shouting. So when somebody uses shouty capitals and put them in red, it has completely different meaning to if you just written a polite email saying, listen, wish you all the best and I hope it goes well. So thank you, that's brilliant. I was going to say that there's some statistics and studies that have been done that show the difference between a happy employee and a not happy employee. And something like, a happy employee can be up to, on average, 25% more productive than an unhappy one. So you can just do the math, what that does to your bottom line. And like you say, Claire, if you have happy employees, you have happy customers because they're going to treat their customers well. Thank you so much for that. So now I want to sort of turn to maybe some success stories. Some of you have had breakthroughs, which is fantastic. Congratulations on your book, Claire. Raka, I want to talk to you about, maybe a success story, and it can be, either from a point of view of a supplier or a customer or for your business. I really don't mind, but we'd love to hear what's gone really, really well for you.
So we've been around for 5 years, so a lot of these stories are there, but the one which is very close to my heart is of these two sisters. When I used to be in Bombay, they used to be our customers. Now, interestingly, these ladies were over 80 years old, and my business, being a healthy business, appealed to them, but they couldn't order online. So they had an issue with, e-commerce. But we figured out a way to take their orders, and we used to have a guy calling them up, figuring out what their requirement was every week, and sending them the stuff that they needed. Also talking to them about products and age-related stuff and what is good, what's a good product that they should try out. So over time, these ladies, I think for about 4 to 5 years, were our customers. And they promoted us. They were the best brand ambassadors we ever had. I mean, better than anything that money can buy. And they had a very large extended family, as well as they were Parsis. So they had a huge setup of other Parsis. I think half the Parsis in Bombay got to know about us through them. And of course, we've had like big businesses that we've dealt with, but they have given us the most happiness. And we kind of miss them now that we've moved out of that business. We miss the two sisters, and we hope that they're well.
Do you still have somebody who actually serves them?
No, so we moved out of the perishable business.
I see.
This was largely so
they
used to, because they used to try out the free range chicken. So we were one of the first ones to start that. And they were the best guys. I mean, they figured out things about it that even we didn't know. So it was good.
It's interesting, what Claire was talking about, and Raka, what you have done in your business, because I remember even when you told me about your business back in 2016, the thing that struck me about you is how much you invested in your employees and how much you made them feel like they were partly owning the business. So they really, like you're saying, having that conversation with these elderly ladies and what they wanted. And that's just a beautiful case study of how that works and how you're.
So I'll just add to that, because that was an interesting talk that was going on. So in our business, we are in an online business. So basically, it's steps that people need to do. They need to come in the morning, do 5 steps, 10 steps, learn how to work with a computer, learn Excel, all those kind of things. So this friend of mine called me during the pandemic, and she said, "How are you surviving? First of all, you're in a different city. You're not even in the city that your business operates out of. And how do you work online? I mean, I've been losing people. I cut salaries for a bit because I couldn't afford and my business was shut, and a lot of people left me." So I said the basic thing that I did before I left was I picked people who had the aptitude, and I trained them. So there's a lady who used to run a tailoring business, and her business went bust. So I taught her how to work in Excel, and today she sends me stock count, everything on Excel. So so that's how you do it. You train people to go up. So that's what we've done successfully. Of course, during the pandemic, we've had to let go of some of our high paid employees, but we placed them with vendors, we placed them with other businesses. So it's been good, and they come back with contacts, details. They come back with how to better the business. So they've been good brand ambassadors of the business. That's what I feel. Yeah.
I love that. filled me with this warm glow, knowing how you run your business like almost like you take care of your family, which is
Yeah. So that's what you have to do basically, because when you're on a shoestring budget, what can you do to make them happy? I mean, money is one part of it, but feeling good about what they're doing, learning a new skill. Now they're working with very large marketplaces. So it requires a lot of tech efficiency. So from understanding how Zoom works to TeamViewer, so they've learned everything. And when they came in, they probably could not even write their names properly. So it's been there from there to there. It's been 5 years, of course. 5 years is a long time to learn skills, but still, it gives me pride that we've taught people things.
And it's also you show that you care, and that's the thing, Raka. When you show people you care, just a thank you. It doesn't have to cost anything to make
That's right.
them feel that they're
So
valued.
India deals a lot with, people who don't have the basic education level. And they're people who never given them any chances, because they're people who are intelligent. I mean, they can do math, they can understand tech, but then they've not had the chance. So it's all a matter of giving them the chances and trusting them. And if they make mistakes, helping them to understand and, get better. So that's it.
Claire, do you have any sort of success stories you'd like to share? Yes.
I'm going to show it a little bit closer.
Let's read it out. Read it out, please, so people can.
So this is the secret diary of a mystery shopper. So I've got to say, I've had this book in the back of my mind for years now. So I've written a couple of books previously, but this has always been, those are true stories. So those are stories that I've been writing for the last 10 years on good stories of mystery shopping that happen, bad stories, and exceptional stories, because I'm always about, I know people say, Claire, the bad stories are the one who sell. All right, that's what, get away from the pain. That's what everybody says. But for me, it's always about, you want to do things right. So how much more can we share of companies who are doing things right to actually make people go towards delivering great service? So obviously we had a few hours left during the pandemic, not really knowing what to do. I thought this could be as you do, a few hours. I thought, well, this will be the time to actually put the stories and share some of the stories. And actually, so there's always a little moral to the story. So I share some great stories about things that happened during mystery shopping visits. Obviously, I don't say any names, and I don't say any, although there's a couple of stories that I do tell names, but they are global companies and everybody knows about them. And so there's always something to learn from it. So there's a story and there's something to learn from it. And yes, I managed to get #1 on Amazon bestseller, which was my goal to do. And hot new release. This is pretty cool, right? Being a hot new release. So it was really, really good. And the book was also for me a kind of repositioning myself in terms of how I present myself. So the last couple of years, yes, a lot of employee experience and keynotes speaking about employee experience and customer experience. And then you realize that everybody at the moment is a CX expert. Everybody talks about customer experience. So this was the beginning of a repositioning and saying, you know what, I've been doing mystery shopping for 10 years. Why am I not continuing putting that in the middle of my business and really kind of talking about everything else around this? So it all drills down. If you do mystery shopping, you will know how to improve your employee experience. If you do mystery shopping, you will increase your customer loyalty. So it was, it was a real kind of shift after this pandemic to launch the book, to reposition myself, to get into the keynote stages or virtual stages and share that message and it's opened up so many. I mean, one day I was on 5 different countries. I was in Germany, I was in Australia, I was in Canada, I was in Singapore at the same time, and Dubai 5 times, in the same day. And you just think, how incredible is that? That would have never happened this time last year.
So I think that's the online, the beauty of online, isn't it? You can be anywhere in the world. You don't have to physically be there. That's fantastic. I'm so happy. Who are you targeting in terms of your reader? Could it be anyone? It's not particularly aimed at small businesses or anything like that, the book.
It's a business book. It is a business book, although they are stories, they are true stories, but it is a business book. So small, medium, large businesses will benefit from the book. It can be read by a team leader looking at it and, you know, telling the stories to their employees and actually sharing and say, what would happen if that happens to our business? You know, this is the kind of things that I'd like the book to become. And also it could be a small business saying, okay, well, maybe we need to look at this in terms of our customer journey, or how can we train better? And obviously mystery shopping now has changed as well, quite a lot, you know, because obviously we couldn't do face-to-face for, you know, the last 7 months. So what else are we doing? So we're doing e-mystery shopping. So you ladies, I could mystery shop your website and give you some great feedback on your experience online. You know, virtual events, mystery shopping. We could virtual events, you know, mystery shop those events. We could do call centers, of course. We could do. There's been so many new channels opening up. There's new opportunities to really give some great measurements so people really understand where they're going.
Sounds brilliant. Thank you, Claire. Sharda, tell me a couple of sort of success stories, because I can imagine in the field of work you're doing, it can get extremely rewarding and emotional. So let's hear a couple of success stories from you.
I'm actually struggling because to identify which one to share, because each one of those testimonials that come from our patients or clients is so heartwarming. It's sort of, you know, I will have hair standing on end when I read many of them. So let me just take a couple of them. The first was, she was one of our first patients who joined us when we started our PCOD program back in 2017. Now, all our programs are for 3 months and you can renew it at the end of 3 months. And she came to us because she was, her main goal was to get regular periods. In her case, it didn't happen for the first 3 months. And somewhere along the way, she told us that she suffers from severe migraines. Now, because we are a holistic health, and because we sort of go out of, that's the thing, right? We go out of a way to deal even with issues which you may not have come to us for originally. We started working with her on her migraine. I remember my own story on migraines, and that's how I ended up starting Sepalika. So migraine happens to any patient with migraine, we sort of work with them. So then we spent the next several months trying to work on her migraine, only to figure out it was a lot of work stress. And so she was working for a law firm, and a lot of it was driven by work stress. The nice part of this lady was that at the end of everything, 3 months, she would never even ask us, where is my period? She knew we were trying to do something, and she would renew automatically, and not for a month, but for the next 3 months. And so we started at end of 2017, and it took us a year to fix her migraine. And after that, she just stayed with us, right? And there was huge pressure on the family to go in for IVF because age was not on her side, and she was obviously expected to have a child. And for some reason, she just stuck to us. And then in end of 2019, the latter half is when she got pregnant. And then during the pregnancy, she did manage to quit her job, but she had a difficult pregnancy. And she came back to us, and what we do is we sort of added some vitamins for her, which her gynecologist was against. And the whole family was obviously insistent that you follow what the gynecologist was saying. In addition, she had swelling on the feet, which happens during pregnancy. And we use acupressure, which is alternate healing. Now, you go to a gynecologist or a mainstream doctor, and when we tell them that we use acupressure to release the water retention that's happening in the body, they'll think it's all voodoo or it's mumbo jumbo, right? But this lady stuck on. She did take the vitamins, which was a risk that she took because this was an ingestible. She stuck on with our acupressure techniques. went on to deliver the baby. And not just that, she still continues to be. So it's like now 2.5 years. And now she wants to lose weight post-delivery. And she continues to be with us. But not once in the entire 2.5 years that she's been with us did she ever question anything that we did. And she just followed everything to, right to the T. And I mean, one of our really, she just said, you know what, the first month I met with you guys, something told me to trust you. And that's why I went along, even though I had family and my doctor discouraging me from doing something like this. So I think that was pretty heartwarming. And then the other story was of a client who was an avid allopathy or Western medicine believer. But it so happened that she went in, her husband was a part of a corporate medical program. And so the family got cover, and therefore she did a blood test and suddenly discovers that she's got an HbA1c, which is a marker of blood sugar in the body, at 11.7 when you should be a normal of 5.3. And she knew me, she called me, and I said, if you go to your doctor, you're going to be straight away put on serious diabetic medication. And she was in a quandary, because she sort of, while she believed that food obviously helps, she couldn't believe that you can use food as medicine. But her choice was to actually go on to a diabetes medication. And then she came on a program. And not only that, she even said that she has certain restrictions on, she's a vegetarian. The family was very fussy about what kind of food they ate, so she couldn't cook separately for herself. So we had to align our food plan to what the family ate, and yet ensure that she followed our principles, our diet principles. But in 3 months, we brought down that HbA1c from 11.7 to 7.4. And that's like an really unbelievable thing to do when you're not using, external insulin to balance your blood sugar. Yeah. So, and then she stayed on for, I think, a month or more, and we brought it down to normal. So that to me was really, and that's another story for someone who never believed in what we did in alternate healing, and then was a full-blown diabetic when she accidentally discovered it.
I love those stories, and it also kind of reminds us that actually the things that we go to doctors for tend to be symptoms of something so much deeper. And that, unfortunately, the way modern medicine works, which, I mean, obviously modern medicine is brilliant, it's done lots of amazing things, but it alleviates symptoms and doesn't often take the time to look at what's really going on. So in your first story, for instance, you're discovering that stress could have been at the heart of a lot of her other symptoms. And, so it also tells me that, you're not just using a cookie cutter template of what to give someone, you're actually taking the trouble to find out what's actually going on for that, patient, and so almost sort of creating a solution that's very personalized for them. And that must be something that is very rare. Shouldn't be, but it is quite rare, isn't it?
It is. It is rare, but it also is something that the downside of doing something like that is that if you have an external investor who's invested in your business, and you try and tell them that you're handcrafting solutions for each individual person, they say, how on earth are you going to scale? So while that is the downside, it also sort of one of the big learnings that I had was to actually say that you've got to be your best judge of what you think you can do, and if it meant that you will actually go against a popular thing like going after venture capital money or institutional investment, because you may not be able to live to their benchmark, then so be it.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy call. It's not an easy call at all.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah, so I think that the lesson from that is that choose your partners with care. You've got to choose someone who actually has the same values and same sort of mission as your business. Otherwise, you could end up,
Yeah, because your expectations and benchmarks are yours and yours alone, and they are absolutely right in what they want to pursue as an investor. Because as an investor, he has this, Rohini, that he has a responsibility for certain returns that he owes his investors. So when he invests, or his investee companies, he has certain expectations of them. So that's their business model. Now, your business model may not be in sync with that, in which case you need to either, and I think one of the biggest issues that a lot of startups, at least in India, find themselves in is that you're often forced to take decisions to please your investors, or because your investors laid it down, even though it may not be in your own organization's culture or in your organization's DNA, as you as a founder, your DNA. Yeah. And that's when things sort of begin to fall apart.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with you. And Anne, tell me, what success stories really spring to your mind? I know you've been going, your business has been going for a lot longer than some of these other younger businesses, but in the recent times. Oh yeah, I think you're still on mute.
Probably recently, actually, this year with COVID, I mean, we do face-to-face bespoke training, and obviously we couldn't do face-to-face bespoke training anymore. And so we had to, within 2 days, we had to suddenly be able to deliver our training virtually, which we lost some clients because they didn't want to do it virtually. But we've talked about doing virtual training for a long time with a particular client who's a global organization. And frankly, we always thought we will need them to, but they kind of said, we'll give you some development money. And the guy who was the head of comms, who is lovely, but he's a bit shambolic and not very organized, and it just never quite happened. But then suddenly we had to do it. And so we've pivoted, everybody's pivoted, but we pivoted immediately to deliver stuff virtually. And actually it's worked really well. And we have, somebody said, I think Claire said, you're doing things all over the world, and we're doing things all over the world. And, we've done training with people in Singapore and India and Pakistan and Canada. And, some of them I did a training course two weeks ago, and didn't realize until afterwards that one of the delegates was in India. We didn't even know. And so that's been a kind of a bit of revelation, and it means that we can now offer training in a way that we wouldn't even, now we're starting to do things face to face again, depending on the client, but we can offer training in a way that we've never been able to do before, because we can open it up across the world, and people don't have to fly to us, we don't have to fly to them. So that's been a real success. And one of our clients who we already had booked in a program of training for them. I can say who they are because we did a case study of them. It's the International Chamber of Shipping, and we started doing a program of media and presentation training with them last year, which was obviously face to face, and we booked in dates to do follow-up training, quite a lot of follow-up training this year. And they just said, we still want to go ahead. When COVID happened, it was all about to start. Because actually global shipping was very much in the eye of the COVID storm. There was a lot going on because of keeping trade lines open and ships not being able to dock at ports and all this kind of stuff. And so we did this whole program of training. We did more training than we thought, because they suddenly had, their chairman was in Singapore, so we did him in Singapore and all these kind of things, which all worked really well. And when I then said to Stuart, who's the head of comms, can we do a case study? Because a lot of our training is one day, so there isn't a whole program of stuff. But when he was sort of saying, we found not just that we've got a team of people who can do presentations and a team of people who can do media training, our internal communications has improved as well. We bonded as a team, and we can talk to each other better as a team just because of the training we've given, which was actually, really nice. So that was, a recent thing, which is we've done a program of, which we often don't do. And it worked really well, and partly that was because we were able to do things virtually, which we never imagined we would.
I think that's a really great example of how sometimes when businesses think about communication and good communication, they tend to think about it externally, how do we communicate to, and they forget that actually the internal communication is probably even more important. And by not focusing on that, you're leaving vacuums where people don't really know what's going on, and you can create some of the problems that I'm sure Claire has discovered in her mystery shopping ventures with for clients. So
I was going to say, this one sometimes people don't understand the value of learning any of these skills. In the first training course we had, we did a kind of, always do an intro of who's who, and this guy said, well, it doesn't matter how good my presentations are. He does lots of speeches to sort of international maritime organizations. It doesn't matter, because they just have to listen anyway. I'm kind of like, what? It doesn't matter how engaging you are and how persuasive you are and how you deliver your messages. It was wow. But then, he's now kind of on board, and because of this year's training, he's kind of started to value it, which is really good.
Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do now is obviously talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the pandemic. And from having heard your story so far, I'm getting a sense that actually it's been a bit of a mixed blessing for you all, that, you've either pivoted or your business has been, in a place where you could take it online relatively easily. So what I'd like to do is maybe get from each of you a sense of what's really helped you to grow in this pandemic, or what the pandemic has done for your business, and look at also the challenges, not just the opportunities. So who would like to go first, rather than me picking on you? Maybe you could volunteer to go when you're ready.
I'll go.
Great.
Well, yeah, I mean, losing your business in 3 days was a bit of a shock to the system. I had to pick myself up from the floor, because really mystery shopping, although the core of my business was very much a face-to-face. And so when everything arrived, the first thing that businesses cut is customer service, is training, it's marketing, is definitely mystery shopping. And so suddenly you just kind of go into a mode of like, what is it all about? What am I going to do if I can't help businesses? What am I going to do? And I've got to say, it's I've had a few weeks of how low can I go? It's been a real kind of situation in terms of it brings to everything to resilience. It brings to everything to emotional intelligence. It brings everything back to the tribe and the people you have around you who are here and supporting you. And without all that, I don't think I would have picked myself up from that floor, and so eventually you kind of start realizing that, there are still people who need you, and how can you reach them? You need to look after your employees, you need to look after your customers. Those are kind of crucial. You don't have a business if you do that. So, like Anne, it was very, very quickly where I thought, well, actually, everything that I do offline, I can do online. The consultancy, I can do the coaching, the training I can do, so I've developed a new training platform. Keynote speaking, everybody's doing virtual keynote speaking now. So, but it was to learn some new skills. So, I spend quite a lot of time on online marketing, upscaling myself, looking at things, looking at virtual keynote speaking, what's good, what's not good, how to improve, those kind of things. And keeping that consistency. I think it was very much about keeping the message of what my vision is, how can I help businesses, where, and that's been I think that's very important, having that vision and really kind of wanted to get to that vision is moving forward. Yes, we talk about resilience and to bouncing back, but it's always better to bounce forwards,
Yes,
actually, learn and look at opportunities. It is easier to say, yes, it has opened up so many opportunities, but it's taken some time before I got there. So yeah. And
thank you, Claire. Anne?
I just had a question to ask Claire, actually. So have you, we will definitely continue with the virtual training after, whenever everything's back to normal. Will you continue with the new programs that you've got when things are back to normal?
Yeah, absolutely. Because in actual fact, I've had to close my operation of my mystery shopping operation locally. So that was a big kind of, 10 years, 11 years I've been doing that. It was my baby kind of things. And I'd had to take the decision to close that and develop a model where actually I can still do the strategic side of things without having the operation side. So now I've got partners who can help. I've got, other mystery shopping companies who have teams in different sides of the world who I can call up on if we need to do some visits. And so I really have developed a almost new model of what I was doing. So I can do it from anywhere. So everything else, I've got an online training platform. So this kind of rolls out, like you've got some training online, so people can just go at any time. And so I keep adding on some training. So it's not just about customer service, but it's about, emotional intelligence, resilience, how to feel better, how to eat better. So it's all about employees, how to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. So it has been a real switch in my business, in the way I'm doing things. Nothing to do with the vision and how I want to help, but very much about the operation and the processes about what I do.
That's great. Now I'm mindful that Sharda has to leave a little bit earlier than everyone else. Sharda, why don't you go next? And I think also before you leave, perhaps, just your advice to anyone who's looking to go into, this particularly the industry that you're in, which in some ways is very crowded, but also it's a huge opportunity. But maybe starting with what the pandemic has meant for you.
It's ironic that you would normally think a business like ours, which is focused on healthcare, should actually pick up with the pandemic, because everybody now is really worried about, everyone's focusing on health. But what I discovered here in India, the upside was that people were no longer asking me, what's an online clinic? How can an online clinic even function? That's the first question that comes to, when we do our marketing or our sales calls, right? You mean to say you treat me without even looking at me? And, how is that even possible? So I think we've crossed that hurdle. However, one of the things I discovered is that we, in our country at least, we tend to pay lip service to health. So if the COVID meant that you needed to boost your immunity, everyone switched to having turmeric milk, or drop some honey and basil leaves and have herbal teas and things like that. Is what I call as token service to, or lip service to health. The real change that you want to do, given that, for example, COVID has clearly shown that people with chronic comorbidities like heart issues or diabetes are at far greater risk, not just for COVID, but also for the intensity with which COVID hits you and the degree of hospitalization issues that you have. That I don't think has changed people's perception fundamentally. So no one is saying, listen, I need to lose weight, or I need to work on my diabetes. So I still face that problem, but so that's one issue. The other thing I realized is that everybody hunkered down. I mean, it was like deer in headlights syndrome. So when this thing hit, people just froze. And therefore, so somebody say, let me act, let me spend money, let me go and do something about my health, beyond getting into sheer panic mode, didn't happen. And it's only now that I can begin to see an uptick. The third thing that's very unique to our business is because every program of ours begins with a blood test. Either labs were shut here and because they were focusing on COVID duty, or especially in India, if you remember, had probably the strictest lockdown for any country in the world. And I think we've done a phenomenal job of keeping our numbers given the size of our population. But that also meant that, for example, a lot of path labs were not allowed to go to people's home to do testing. People are paranoid. They don't want outsiders to come into their home to test, nor do they want to go to a lab to get themselves tested. So those are issues that we're ironing out. But what we did during this time was to say, okay, business is not going to happen let's focus on product development. So we use this time to actually start developing some of our newer programs, which we want to launch in January. So that's how sort of the pandemic, so the both good and bad parts to the pandemic on our business. My overall, thing is, and this is especially to entrepreneurs, and this is something that I did. My first lesson is I would always advise people to go back to school. Go back to school and learn. So what I did was, I had an MBA degree when I started this business, which is good when you start a business. But remember, when you're doing something as special as what I'm doing, which is medicine, or which is working with people's health, one of the first things they look at is, what are your credentials? As somebody, and I do a lot of videos for our programs, right? So what are Sharda's credentials to talk about nutrition when she comes on screen? Also, personally, if I'm going to be, if my business, although the medicine part lies with my co-founder, as an individual, I feel uncomfortable if I don't know what is happening. So I went back to school. I went back to nutrition school. I went to the US, and for over a year, I studied. I did 3 trips between India and the US, luckily in 2019, and qualified to become a nutritional therapy practitioner. So one of the things that I would advise founders to do is, if there's something that's very critical to your business, and if it's not something that comes to you very naturally, you need to go back and develop and learn that skill. I think that's my one bit of advice. The second bit is, and this is especially for people who are doing pioneering work, or people who are getting into unusual categories, which are not familiar for the rest of the world, you're likely to find a lot of naysayers. You're likely to find people who told me, for example, that you're telling me that you can reverse a disease with just food and lifestyle. I mean, you must be joking. Or first of all, the fact that a disease can even be reversed. My doctor has told me I've got hypertension and I'm going to live with it for life. So, or my doctor has told me that you've got to be on blood pressure medication, or blood sugar medication, or diabetes. It's a lifelong issue. And you're now coming and telling me, no, that's not the case, that you can, actually reverse it. Secondly, you're telling me not only can you reverse it, but you're going to be reversing it with food. I mean, whoever, would believe something like that. So I have a lot of naysayers. I have a lot of people who will say, you're going to be appealing only to very small, very niche segment of people. So be prepared. And therefore, I believe that, you need to be your best salesperson always. You need to have faith in what you're doing. And even though people may not understand what you're doing, you need to be able to see 2 years ahead, few steps ahead, because otherwise, the moment you don't have conviction in what you're doing, you yourself, because you're not going to have people who are going to have that conviction, you're not going to be able to move ahead. So that would be my second piece of advice.
I love that. So actually, that's why the content bit was so important. You have to educate people before you can get them to see why they should come and work with you. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Sharda. So Anne, tell me about what the pandemic has done for you. I mean, we talked a little bit about, obviously, about your business going online, and it feels like there's been lots of opportunities emerging, but has there been anything that's particularly challenged you?
I think our challenge, I mean, we did lose work because clients didn't want to do things virtually. Our challenge is more in the sort of medium term going forward, actually, because we, as I said, we specialize in working with charities and not-for-profits, and charity budgets have gone down and they're making job cuts everywhere. And so that means our kind of core client base and the people we love working with, because we like working with charities rather than, as I said, commercial firms, though we do work with SMEs and we work with multinationals, and we do, but that's our kind of passion, is to work with the charities, not-profit sector. But we need to kind of think about that, because we obviously want the business to continue and to survive. And if our core client base has no money, they're not going to be commissioning much training. So that's a thing for us to, think about quite carefully. And we've done some thinking about it already, about which sectors we can, have knowledge of and specialize in, and where we might be able to find a new niche, a new client base. So that's our challenge out of COVID is that really.
And just on that, the fact that so much of communication has now become digital, does that present any opportunities in new kinds of training programs that may not be, as intensive in terms of your time, like, courses that people could buy for their employees or team leaders or anything like that? Is that something you would consider?
Do you know, we haven't, because very much so far, all our training is very much, it's bespoke, it's not off the shelf, it's, and we have, over the years, we've done some open courses, which we advertise, and people, obviously not virtually online, but people can just book a different individual place. And honestly, the investment of time to sell a place which is £100 compared to us selling a bespoke course, which is the same investment of time, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So, and we did do a couple when we started the smart video courses. We did a couple, and the whole way through the process, I was vowing, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. It's too hard. So I think because our kind of, we're not unique, but we're very much, we'll design something specially for you, and I think that's what we would always want to retain doing. I can't see us necessarily designing sort of online courses. Part of anything else, it feels like everybody designs online programs and courses at the moment, and
That's
so
true. It's a bit of a crowded market, isn't it?
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So Raka, same question to you. Pandemic, what's it done for your business, and what have you learned from it?
So the pandemic has, so I'll just tell you in one line, I'm in the grocery business. So from March onwards, when we went into lockdown, and before that, thankfully, we had moved into, everything to do with the marketplaces and online. So it just hit the roof. So for the first 4 to 5 months in the lockdown, we did extremely well, better than we had done in 5 years. Of course, things have opened up and people are now venturing outside. So things have changed, but interestingly, consumer behavior has shifted. So a lot of people are still buying things online, people who never bought things online previously. So in a way, it's been a blessing. Having said that, we had to let go of people during the pandemic because we were based out of Bombay and local trains didn't work for the greater part of 4 to 5 months. They couldn't come to work. But we placed them with other companies closer to their, where they were located. And so we figured out smarter ways of doing the same thing, doing our business, cutting costs. We did cut costs tremendously, which has worked to our favor. But from now, where it goes will be interesting. But for us, it's been a blessing in a way. Yeah.
So in a way, what the pandemic has done is it's kind of demystified the whole experience of shopping online, because maybe people were before they were a little bit suspicious. They wanted to actually feel and experience what they were buying, and you've helped them to see that actually that the experience is absolutely fine.
Yeah, and then we would just not be able to figure out that certain categories, certain products, it just hit the roof with a couple of marketplaces. We're not able to figure out why are people buying so much of it. But then it's been in a way good for this kind of a business. It's been great. I mean, I think one of the few businesses that have really done well during the pandemic, and it's the world over, not only in India, is the grocery business.
What specific categories did you find people were really buying? I mean, here in the UK, it was things like pasta.
Plant-based proteins.
Oh, plant-based.
That's the thing. Yeah, plant-based proteins. So things which as opposed to having meat, it's a source of plant protein. So those were things people were buying. Couldn't figure out for what reason. Yeah, but maybe because of alternate diet purposes or not eating meat. Because in India, for the first couple of months, there was a big dip in eating meat. People were scared that, because they didn't know about the disease so much, so they didn't know from where it would come, so they stopped eating meat. So we noticed that a lot for the first 3-4 months, and of course it's still on a high, but not like the first 3 months were nightmarish. We were figuring out where stocks would come from. Different cities were in a lockdown. Our vendors sit somewhere else, we are somewhere else, and It was more logistics than anything else, but it was a good problem. We were happy with that kind of problem. Give that to us any day.
Sure.
Having demand is it's a great problem.
I think Anne had a question.
Yeah, and
No, I was just going to say kind of what you said. Is that because there's a move to veganism? I mean, in the UK, veganism in the last year or
in
so
terms
is
of
really...
lifestyle. Yes, I mean India is also a meat-eating country, and I used to deal in meat products myself. But I noticed that a lot of people shifted in the month of March to close to August, early August, to not eating meat, and they were buying all the products which were identified as sources of plant protein. So could have been veganism, could have been scared with COVID and not knowing whether to have meat or not. Could have been anything, honestly. But it was an interesting shift that I saw. Yeah.
So we're sort of drawing our, lovely conversation to a gentle close, and I want to ask each of you to look ahead to whatever the new normal is going to look like. I mean, we're getting some glimpses of what it might look like, but for each of your industries, you may have a vision of what it's going to look like, and also just more broadly for anyone who is looking to set up their own business or looking to grow their business. What one piece of advice would you offer to someone watching this program and thinking, well, you know what, I'd quite like to do something that I'm passionate about, but I'm not quite sure what the right thing would be? Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I think, interestingly, taking a leaf from what Sharda had to say, if you want to start your business, you may be passionate about certain things, but a business means every aspect of everything. So, knowing everything as a business owner is very important, starting from accounts to doing, your marketing, to customer service, to logistics, to basics, filing your taxes. I feel that, a lot of us, I mean, I know that I didn't have a lot of those skills. I had sourcing skills, but not the other, daily stuff. But during COVID, what it taught me was that it's good to have those skills, because you didn't know, I mean, you had to continue the business no matter what, whether your employees came to work or whether somebody said that, people are sick at home, I can't participate for the next 14 days. What do you do? So in terms of that, what COVID taught me, and being an entrepreneur, I always thought that it's of importance. I can outsource. And of course, outsourcing is better quality, but I should know the basics of running my business, so that if any part of it comes, somebody is not reported to work, somebody is not giving work on time, I am able to do that bit of work. So that I would advise, whether you go to school, back to school, or whether you do, YouTube classes, or whatever works, but learn the basics of running a business, and not only the fun parts of it, but the tedious, bookkeeping, accounting, everything. So yeah.
I think that's very true, and a lot of people forget that. They just focus on the thing that they really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So initially it was the case with me. So when I started my business, I thought I will raise money, I will do this, and I'm not meant to do the menial work. But that's where, that's the most important thing of the business, because if you don't tighten those ends up, what you'll end up doing is harming the business. So it's best to, and that I did that during COVID. So I said, okay, fine. If tomorrow nobody reports to work, sorry.
Oh, we lost Raka. I think she may have already said what she wanted to say. So who would like to go next? Anne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. That's fine. So I think I've talked about how our business is going to, we're going to continue with the things that we've done after lockdown, but we're looking at probably new markets. But probably a piece of advice I would give actually is to find a niche and focus on your niche, because there's a huge potential client base. I have to stop doing that. There's a huge potential client base out there, and if you don't know where you're focusing or where you're trying to get clients, it's like spraying a machine gun around or a hose around. It could be anything. And I think the thing for us, so we've had our business for 22 years. The first game changer for us was when I started working in it full time, and I left the BBC and I took redundancy and I started working on the business. And at the beginning, we didn't have a niche. We didn't know, we did have some clients that we'd worked with, sort of membership bodies. We had some education clients. But then when I sort of looked and thought, okay, what am I going to go for multinationals? Am I going to go for this? Am I going to go? And suddenly, actually, look, we've got these membership bodies. Let's focus on membership bodies. We've got education clients. Let's focus on education. And then we started to build up charities. And so when I can say for example, we've got about 3 or 4 clients who are charities who are within sort of veterans affairs. So, for example, Help for Heroes is one of our clients, and some others like that. So if I have a client, if I'm talking to a client about the work we can do for them, they find comfort in the fact that we've worked with similar organisations before. We had a client that we're just going to be doing some work for next year, some storytelling training, and they're in the veterinary sphere. And they asked, who else have you worked with in the veterinary sphere? Well, we've worked with Battersea Dogs Home, we've worked with the PDSA, we worked with the Kennel Club, we've had work. So we, there's lots of multiple niches because we've worked with lots of different sectors, but just knowing that we can give comfort to our clients because we know the area and the challenges they are and the area they work in has been a really good thing for us.
I think that's really good advice. And in the beginning, when you don't really know what your niche is, what would you suggest people do? Because, I think it's easier once you've actually done some things and you get a bit of feedback and you realize something works and something doesn't. So at the beginning, how would you identify your niche?
I think you have to be comfortable with your niche. So find an area which you're passionate about. If you love IT, then focus on IT companies. If you love, as probably Claire does, if you like sort of fast moving consumer goods kind of businesses or retail, then focus on retail. If you love, we like charities, so we work with charities. I love the fact we work with veterans charities because I worked a lot when I was at the BBC on programs involving veterans. So it's a kind of just find areas where you're comfortable with.
That makes so much sense. And Claire, tell me what advice you have for.
Well, it kind of follow Anne's pattern, because I think it's finding a new niche, and finding that niche is actually giving people what they want, not what they need. We think that they need this, and I think I'm going to develop a new coaching program because I know everybody needs me to coach them how to do this or that. And actually, no one does. So you're spending a lot of time, effort, and things to actually start a new business that you think people need. But if they don't, then it's a complete waste of time. So market research your audience, find your niche, market research who is going to be your customers or potentially your customers. Ask them the questions. Will you buy this from me? Will you need this? Will you want that? Will you want that? And actually be able to refine that niche that Anne was talking about. It's really, really important. Really.
Yeah. That's an interesting distinction, and I think that there's a little bit of scope for maybe confusion in that, separation between need and want. From what I'm hearing from what you just said, Claire, there is sometimes you could have a need, and maybe that need needs to be addressed. However, if that person doesn't see that as important or a priority, or is willing to live with that problem, whatever it is, then however amazing your solution is, they're probably not going to want to buy it. So the key is to find someone who needs help or wants help, but is also willing to get someone to help them to solve the problem. I think that's so true. Raka, we lost you. I'm guessing your battery ran out or something. Had you finished saying what you were going to say? Did you want to add any final sort of thoughts?
No, pretty much I said it, said what I wanted to say. I think, that's what I have learned. Everyone's journey is different. And I have learned that, the areas in which I was pretty weak, I had to relearn the whole exercise. Of course, I used to outsource that, but during COVID, what happened was a lot of people that we used to work with for a while were not working, or they had issues. Yeah, I had to do everything for a while, and that was the peak period where our sales were like skyrocketing and everything was going on. So that was a test for me, and I decided that, post that I've been learning a bit of tech, I've been learning finance, accounts, bookkeeping, whatever. So yeah, it's I feel for my business, I must know what's happening. Otherwise, to leave it with other people is kind of risky.
I think it also helps you identify the right kind of team members
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
can't hire someone if you don't really know what their job is going to be. And what
Correct.
is
Yeah.
what is it that you want them to do? So I agree with you. Listen, ladies, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. It's been I can't believe 90 minutes have flown by. I hope you've enjoyed it too. And for people who are watching, you can find, Anne, Claire, Raka, and Sharda at their respective websites, and I will post links to where you can find them in the description of this video. So please reach out to them if you think you want to have a conversation or want to do business with them. And just final sort of reminder, obviously Claire has a book which is already an Amazon bestseller. I have a book which is not a bestseller. It could be. It could be someday. So, but jokes aside, I think their stories are a really nice little slice of what they've experienced and how they set up their own businesses. And, who knows, it may be something that you resonate with and you get inspired by to do your own thing. So with that, I'm going to end today's conversation. Thank you all very much. Any final words from you all?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was lovely. Great meeting everybody.
Yeah. Yes. Good to meet you.
Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.